Did the influence of revolutionary ideals spread across the world, even as some tried to extinguish it? The American Revolution spread the desire for freedom, not only in America, but around the globe. Yet, even as it inspired change, chains remained unbroken at home. During and after the Revolution, Americans began to question the fairness of their society. African American soldiers, like Peter Salem and Salem Poor, who fought bravely in battles such as Bunker Hill, wondered why they remained enslaved after risking their lives for liberty. This growing awareness led individuals and groups to call for the abolition of slavery and greater political democracy. In some states, attempts were made to expand political rights. For example, New Jersey's 1776 Constitution allowed women and free black men who met property requirements to vote, a significant step towards broader participation. Though the provision was rescinded in 1807, these efforts reflected how revolutionary ideals influenced society's views on equality and rights. However, the slave-based economy in the southern states grew stronger during this period. Many leaders who spoke about liberty and natural rights owned enslaved people themselves, highlighting a deep contradiction in the new nation. For instance, George Washington, while serving as president in Philadelphia, faced Pennsylvania's Gradual Abolition Act of 1780, a law that aimed to dismantle slavery by declaring that no child born in Pennsylvania after its passage would be a slave. This act was like a pebble dropped in a pond, creating ripples that challenged the status quo. To circumvent the law, Washington rotated his enslaved workers back to his estate in Mount Vernon, Virginia, before they reached the 6-month residency that would grant them freedom. This practice illustrates how even celebrated champions of freedom took deliberate steps to preserve slavery. Despite these contradictions, significant efforts emerged to challenge the institution of slavery. Individuals like Anthony Benezet, a Quaker educator and abolitionist, spoke out vehemently against the slave trade. In his writings, such as the Observations on the Enslaving, Importing, and Purchasing of Negroes, he argued that slavery harmed everyone involved, the enslaved and the enslavers. Benezet founded one of the first anti-slavery societies and established schools for African American children, striving to open people's eyes to the moral injustices of slavery. Yet, many ignored his appeals to protect their economic interests. In Massachusetts, Prince Hall and other African Americans took legal action by submitting freedom petitions to the courts. They argued that enslaved people had a natural right to freedom, drawing upon the very principles of liberty and equality that fueled the Revolution. Although their 1777 petition to the Massachusetts legislature was initially unsuccessful, their efforts laid the groundwork for future legal challenges. Beyond legal action, Prince Hall founded the first African American Masonic lodge, known as Prince Hall Freemasonry, which became a center for community organization and leadership. It provided a platform for African Americans to advocate for their rights in a society that often marginalized them. At the same time, the new United States boasted a high literacy rate among men compared to the rest of the world. This widespread literacy allowed revolutionary ideas to spread quickly through pamphlets, newspapers, and public debates. For instance, Thomas Paine's influential pamphlet, Common Sense, sold over 100,000 copies within a few months, galvanizing public support for independence. Men were encouraged to be informed citizens who could actively participate in democracy. In contrast, women's literacy rates were significantly lower, as many girls did not receive formal education beyond basic reading, if at all. This limitation hindered their ability to engage with new political ideas and kept them largely out of public life. While boys attended schools and universities, girls were often taught only domestic skills at home. Recognizing this disparity, the concept of Republican motherhood emerged. This idea suggested that women had a vital role in nurturing Republican values, liberty, virtue, and civic responsibility in their children, especially their sons. While this gave women new importance in society, it also reinforced traditional roles by confining them to the domestic sphere. Women like Abigail Adams sought to challenge these limitations. In a famous 1776 letter to her husband John Adams, she urged him to remember the ladies when drafting new laws for the nation. She warned that if attention was not paid to women's rights, they would foment a rebellion. Her words highlighted the desire among women for greater legal rights and recognition. Similarly, Judith Sargent Murray, an early advocate for women's rights, penned essays like On the Equality of the Sexes in 1790. She used logic and religious arguments to assert that women's minds were as capable as men's and that they deserved the same educational opportunities. Despite her compelling arguments, many in society dismissed her ideas. delaying significant progress in women's education and rights. The influence of revolutionary ideals did not remain confined within America's borders. The Declaration of Independence inspired liberation movements in France, Haiti, and Latin America. Like sparks leaping from a fire, the desire for freedom spread across continents. In France, the French Revolution began in 1789, adopting principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The French people overthrew the monarchy and attempted to establish a republic, influenced in part by the American example. In Haiti, Toussaint Louverture led enslaved Africans in a revolt against French colonial rule, resulting in the first Black Republic and the only successful slave revolt in Western history. The Haitian Revolution sent shockwaves through the Americas and Europe, challenging the very foundations of slavery and colonialism. In Latin America, leaders like Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín fought for independence from Spanish rule. Bolívar, known as El Libertador, was instrumental in the liberation of present-day Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. These movements were inspired by revolutionary ideals of self-governance and natural rights. However, powerful forces tried to suppress these changes. In France, the revolution led to internal strife, including the Reign of Terror under Danton, Marat, and Robespierre, and eventually to Napoleon Bonaparte's rise to power, altering the course of the revolution. In Haiti, foreign armies from Britain and Spain, as well as internal conflicts, threatened the revolution's success before France even did. European powers were determined to maintain control over their colonies and the lucrative plantation economies reliant on enslaved labor. Even figures like Thomas Paine, who had written Common Sense to inspire American independence, experienced the turmoil firsthand. Participating in the French Revolution, Paine was elected to the French National Convention. However, his opposition to the execution of King Louis XVI and his calls for moderate reforms led to his imprisonment during the Reign of Terror, where he narrowly escaped the guillotine. Thus, while the struggle in one nation became the catalyst for global change, many tried to halt the progress. The revolution lit a fire that illuminated the path toward freedom, but the shadows of oppression and inequality remained. Who could have imagined that the influence of revolutionary ideals in America would ignite a worldwide movement, even as old chains and entrenched systems tried to stop it? The spark of revolution demonstrated that ideas could cross oceans and mountains, challenging the world to rethink concepts of freedom and justice.